Vicenzino, who joins us from Bogota. Hello, thank you very much for being with us on France 24. Is this the beginning of the end for Maduro, or can he still crush this new wave of opposition, do you think?
I mean, it's an uphill battle. This is a fast-moving geopolitical chess game. With each passing day, the risks increase exponentially within Venezuela, within the Western Hemisphere, and the broader international community. Generally speaking, this Bolivarian revolution, now headed by Maduro, started by Chavez, has been dependent upon several key factors. One has been the international price of oil. Secondly, has been firm support of the military. And third is creating a state of fear. On the first front, the price of oil from roughly 1998 up until, let's say, roughly 2014, the high price of oil financed the revolution and its ability to pay the army and the military forces. Obviously, with U.S. sanctions being passed in recent days against Venezuela, that's been a big game changer. It basically outlaws the use of dollars in either buying or purchasing Venezuela oil. And that, like I said, oil is the lifeline of the regime. Secondly is the military. You could see it's far from monolithic. You have divisions that are increasing over time. Third, that state of fear. In recent times, the opposition has grown very much bold. The opposition has united politically. Its support has become far more broad-based across socioeconomic lines. And that opposition has now received diplomatic support and recognition from the United States, Canada, the leading countries of the Western Hemisphere, the European Parliament, and many individual governments, which will more recognize the opposition in recent days. So putting this all together, summarizing, going back to your question, it's an uphill struggle for Maduro to survive. Now, it's also important not to underestimate is the Cuban factor. Obviously, the oil that Chavez was given to the Cuban over the years kept the Cuban economy going. And a lot of its quote-unquote what you call advisors, which are basically committed revolutionaries, have infiltrated and dominated the ranks of Venezuela's military and security apparatus for the last 20 years. They won't go down easily without a fight, and it's important not to underestimate that. And also, you look at Venezuela. Venezuela is now it's at the forefront of a broader geopolitical competition, pitting the U.S., the West, the Europe, and leading Latin American countries against countries like Russia, Iran, and other countries from around the world that have their own vested interests in the protection and the preservation and survival of the Maduro regime. Bottom line, I would say, is that after years of economic mismanagement, after years of endemic corruption, Nicolas Maduro is now reaping what Hugo Chavez sowed over several years.
And you mentioned the international community. You're in Colombia. How are regional powers responding so far to this standoff?
I would say represented largely what you call the Lima Group. It's about 14 nations, many of the leading countries in the region, particularly if you look at Venezuela's neighbors, which share a large border, such as Brazil and Colombia. They're the ones absorbing the majority of the refugees fleeing the situation in Colombia. Now you probably have over 3 million that have fled the country. Those 3 million, the majority have been going into Colombia, into Brazil. So they've had to deal with the spillover of the crisis in Venezuela. And then also you have the fact is that Europe, the European Parliament recognized the opposition. Individual governments, it's different. Maybe they might not come out directly supporting Juan Guaido as interim president, but they're definitely supporting the democratic process and lending their support to the opposition. And I would say, ultimately, what you'll see is this is going to be unfolding. There's talk also of, international intervention, people talking about U.S. military intervention. But I think ultimately that would only, any form of intervention would happen if there's an extreme humanitarian situation that basically destabilizes the security and the stability of the Western Hemisphere. And any form of interference wouldn't be just the United States. It would be, I would say, collective and multilateral from the states of the Western Hemisphere, and it wouldn't be coming from the authorization of any form of interference would not be coming from the UN Security Council, where basically the U.S., France, and the U.K. are on one side, while Russia and China are on the other side. It would most likely be some form of legitimacy would be provided, I think, by the Organization of American States, which firmly supports the opposition in Venezuela.
And looking at today's apparent defection of an active general, is that significant, do you think?
Yes, yes, and it's an important development. When we were speaking about earlier is that one of the key pillars of the support of the Bolivarian Revolution, not just being the price of oil, but the key thing being is that firm military unity. And it's far from monolithic. At the beginning of when Guaido declared that he was interim president of Venezuela, the top military brass immediately supported the Maduro regime. Basically, there's also divisions within, and I would say within the middle and lower tier ranks of the military, many of these individuals, these officers and soldiers, ordinary soldiers, their families are sharing in the deprivations of ordinary Venezuelans. And so the support for the regime can't just be coming from the top. It's got to be unified throughout the ranks. And ultimately, the future of this regime will be dependent upon which way these ranks, which way they go. And we've seen already immediately with the first top-ranking Air Force general disavowing the government and calling for fellow officers to do so. I'll go back to my original point. This is a fast-moving geopolitical game. The risks are very high, not only just for inside Venezuela, for throughout the region and internationally.
Marco Vicenzino, thank you very much for having spoken to us. Thank you.